A millionaire CEO turned down 9 socialites on a blind date and, surprisingly, chose the clumsy single mom. And the reason left his mother shocked. Before the story begins, let us know in the comments, what city are you watching from? And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Seriously, this is never going to work, muttered Layla Parker as she stared at the glowing sign of the fanciest restaurant in Boston. Wearing a dress borrowed from her sister and holding her son Josh's hand, she sighed. This place probably has silverware I've never even seen in my life. This is the restaurant, replied her younger sister, Riley, hiding her face behind the steering wheel. You just have to go and make him regret ever being born. And boom, date over the plan was simple, or at least that's what Riley said. Their grandma, thrilled that her granddaughter was single, had signed Riley up on an elite dating site where select women could meet high-level bachelors. Riley, who was allergic to commitment and 100% focused on her career as a makeup influencer, decided the date needed to crash and burn. And who better to do that than Layla, her loud, funny, spontaneous older sister, who also happened to be a single mom. What if he actually likes me? Layla asked, half laughing. Impossible. He's expecting a model? Not a mom who shows up late with a kid and chaos in her eyes. Layla made a dramatic gesture and stepped out of the car, holding her son Josh's hand. He wore a tiny suit, blue sneakers, and clutched a Buzz Lightyear toy. Let's go, partner. Mission: scare off a millionaire, Layla whispered, winking at him. As soon as she walked into the restaurant, she could smell expensive perfume, hear soft music, and feel the maître's eyes scanning her from head to toe like she was some exotic creature. Before she could explain anything, her foot slipped on the entrance rug. She stumbled, and a waiter trying to catch her ended up spilling a glass of juice right onto the suit of a man sitting at the next table. Layla turned to look, and the man with the juice stain? He was him. The date. The man was handsome in a dangerous kind of way. Custom suit, serious expression, and eyes so focused they looked like they could read minds. His silence was awkward. Or maybe it was the fact that Layla just made a waiter spill juice on his very expensive clothes. Hi, I'm Riley, but you can just call me a walking disaster, she said, trying to wipe the suit with the waiter's napkin. His silence felt like performance art, but the poor waiter beside him was sweating more than she was. Are you okay? He finally asked, in a voice as serious as a bankruptcy notice. Depends. Do you usually sue people for wine attacks? Derek simply motioned to the chair. Layla sat down, praying the chair wouldn't slide out and cause another scene. And now, sitting across from Derek Carter, the most reclusive CEO in Chicago, she wondered if it was still possible to escape through the kitchen. Yeah, I was never really good at rich people mating rituals, she blurted out. Derek raised an eyebrow. Was that a joke? Yep, sorry. I'm usually funnier when I'm not trying to impress someone with my silverware knowledge. He glanced at the table. You used the dessert fork to eat the bread. I knew something felt off. I thought it was a fitness fork. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost unnoticeable, but it was there, a hint of a smile. Josh, sitting next to Layla, was swinging his legs impatiently. Mom, he looks just like Uncle Bob when he's out of coffee. He's serious, sweetheart. He's a CEO. I think CEOs are made of seriousness and spreadsheets. Derek looked at the boy, curious. You're 5 years old, he asked. 5 years, 2 months, and 8 days. But I'm growing, okay? I can make popcorn all by myself. Layla's eyes went wide. Sweetheart, you don't. I know when my mom's nervous, she talks fast and makes too many jokes like now. Layla buried her face in her hands. Great. Why don't you tell him I snore and sneak chocolate cereal at night, too? Josh grinned at Derek and leaned forward. Do you want to be my new daddy? The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a butter knife. Layla froze. Josh, what? You're nice. You look like a cartoon hero, and you make mommy blush. That's a good start, right? She was fully expecting Derek to get up and leave. But to her total surprise, he laughed. Really laughed. A low, genuine laugh like it had been stuck somewhere deep in his chest for a long time. Layla froze. She'd never heard anything about him laughing. Not in interviews. Not online. Not even on Google Images. Well, that's new, he muttered, adjusting his jacket. What is? Laughing on a date? Or laughing at all? Layla didn't know what to say. She wasn't there to impress anyone, and definitely not to get involved with a CEO who looked like he just stepped out of a luxury magazine. All she wanted was to make sure he gave up and ended this comedy of errors as quickly as possible. But now, with Derek laughing and Josh looking at the two of them like some kind of little Cupid, things were dangerously getting out of control. "Okay, time to be honest," she said, looking straight at him. "I'm not who you think I am. My name's Layla, not Riley. I came here in my sister's place because she didn't want to come. I have a son, this one, and I have nothing to do with this fancy world, all elegant and full of mysterious spoons." Derek stared at Layla for a few seconds. She took a deep breath, waiting for a lecture, but he simply said, "Thank you for coming." She blinked. "What? This was the best dinner of my week, maybe even my month." Josh smiled. "So, are you going to be my new dad?" Layla covered her face again. Derek just laughed again, but Layla didn't pay attention. She just wanted to get out of there and go back to her regular life with loose pajamas and instant noodles. Little did she know that the city's most reclusive and most desired millionaire was now very curious about her and Josh, and it wouldn't be so easy for Layla to get rid of him. Derek Monroe watched Layla with that expression that usually made employees break into a sweat and investors rethink their decisions. But this time, something was different. His eyes didn't leave her, not for a second. While the other women on previous dates talked about yachts, jewels, and trips to Europe, Layla was talking to the waiter about his favorite baseball team. "Really? You root for the Red Sox?" "Poor thing," she said, making a dramatic face. "I root for the Patriots, but I feel your pain. Sometimes we choose to suffer on purpose." The waiter laughed so hard he nearly spilled the water pitcher. Derek frowned. In the 9 previous dates, not a single woman had even looked at the restaurant staff. They were too busy trying to impress him with talk of modern art and French wines. "What about you, Derek? What's your team?" Layla asked, turning to him with those bright eyes. "I don't have time for sports," he replied automatically. "Oh, right. You must be too busy counting money and scheduling more meetings to plan more meetings." Josh raised his little hand. "Can I pick dessert, Mom?" "Of course, sweetheart. Pick a big one. Life's too short for small desserts." Derek watched the interaction. Layla didn't check the prices on the menu, didn't ask if he was paying. She simply let her son choose whatever he wanted, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I want the chocolate sundae with 3 scoops of ice cream," said Josh, excited. "Perfect choice, buddy. What about you, Derek? Want something sweet? Or are you sticking with your usual stress diet?" He looked at her. No woman had ever spoken to him like that. Direct, straightforward, not trying to impress. "Why don't you treat me like the others do?" he asked, curious. Layla shrugged. "What do you mean? Like a demigod who came down from Olympus to bless us with his presence?" "Something like that." "Oh, because you're just a guy. A rich, good-looking kind of uptight guy, but still just a guy. I bet you lose your keys sometimes and get nervous speaking in public." Derek blinked twice. How did she know he hated giving speeches? "Besides," Layla went on, "money doesn't make anyone special. My neighbor, Miss Martha, is 80 years old, lives in a tiny apartment, and makes the best cookies in the world. She's way more interesting than any millionaire I've ever met. You know other millionaires? Actually, you're the first. And honestly, I'm not that impressed so far." Josh looked at Derek seriously. "My mom says things that sometimes hurt, but she also makes Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes." "That's an important skill," Derek said, not knowing what else to say. "Super important." Layla agreed. "Because real happiness doesn't come from a bank account. It comes from badly shaped pancakes on Sunday mornings and watching cartoons in pajamas." Derek felt something strange in his chest. When was the last time he watched TV? Or wore pajamas? Or did anything that didn't involve spreadsheets and reports? "You look sad," said Josh, tilting his head. "Like those business guys in movies who work too much and forget how to smile." "Josh," Layla said, trying to scold him. But she was laughing. "What?" "It's true. He looks like he hasn't played in a long time." Derek looked at the boy, 5 years old, and already better at reading people than his 40-year-old advisors. "Playing isn't exactly productive," he said. "Productive?" Layla repeated, looking surprised. "Wow, you turned fun into a business meeting. That's sad. even for CEO workaholic standards. Workaholic? Someone addicted to work. It's when a person works so much they forget there's life outside the office like you. Derek stayed quiet. She wasn't wrong. You know what your problem is? CEOs like you? Layla went on, taking a spoonful of Josh's dessert. You think success is only about money and power, but real success is being able to sleep well at night, knowing you were a decent person during the day. And you can do that? Sleep well? Most nights, except when Josh is a nightmare and ends up in my bed doing a starfish pose. Josh laughed. I don't do a starfish pose. Honey, you take up more space in the bed than a golden retriever. Derek caught himself smiling again. You're different, he finally said. Different how? Good different? Or should I call security? Different, refreshing. Layla smiled. Thanks. I think, though refreshing is kind of a weird word to describe a person. Sounds like you're talking about soda. And there it was, Derek laughing again. For the second time that night, the waiter brought the check and Derek reached for it automatically, but Layla raised her hand. Hey, I can pay my share. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. Financial independence is sexy. Derek looked at her, intrigued. Layla Parker was, without a doubt, the most unpredictable woman he had ever met. And for the first time in years, Derek Monroe was truly curious to see what would happen next. The next morning, Derek Monroe sat at the mahogany table in the family mansion, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly, while his mother, Eleanor Monroe, flipped through a society magazine with the sharp precision of someone scouting for future daughters-in-law. So, dear, she said without looking up, how was your date with young Riley last night? Derek stopped stirring his coffee. How could he explain that Riley was actually Layla, that she had a 5-year-old son, and that he had laughed more in 2 hours than he had in the last 2 years? It was different. Different bad or different promising. Eleanor finally looked at him over her reading glasses. Different good. Very good. She snapped the magazine shut with a crisp sound. Derek Monroe. In 9 dates, you turned down an oil heiress, 2 senators' daughters, a classical pianist, a Harvard PhD, a tech entrepreneur, an award-winning artist, and an international philanthropist. What does this Riley have that's so special? Derek took a deep breath. His mother was not going to like what she was about to hear. Well, first of all, her name's not Riley. It's Layla. Second, she's a single mom. Third, she called me a workaholic who's addicted to meetings. And fourth, he paused. She made me laugh. The silence that followed was so deep Derek could hear the ticking of the room's clock. She's a single mother? Eleanor repeated, as if she were translating a sentence from another language. She has a 5-year-old son, Josh. He asked me if I wanted to be his new dad. Derek braced himself for an explosion, for a lecture about family legacy, reputation, how the Monroes didn't mix with those kinds of people. Instead, Eleanor clapped her hands. How wonderful. Excuse me? Derek, you smile while talking about her. I haven't seen you genuinely smile since, well, ever. And a single mother shows responsibility, maturity. Besides, I've always wanted to be a grandmother. Derek blinked several times, thinking he might be having some sort of early morning hallucination. Mom, are you feeling okay? Should I call the doctor? I'm perfectly fine, thank you. Actually, I'm thrilled. When do I get to meet her? You want to meet her? Of course I do. A woman who made my son laugh must be someone special. And a little boy, too. What's his name again? Josh. Derek was officially in shock. He had expected resistance, not a welcome committee. Mom, maybe it's too soon to. Nonsense, dear. I'll organize a family lunch here at the house. Nothing too formal, just the 3 of us. For counting the boy. How about Sunday? Are you sure? Absolutely. And Derek, she stood up, adjusting her blazer confidently. For the first time in 32 years, you've brought someone interesting into this house, even if technically you haven't brought her yet. 2 hours later, Derek was on the phone with Layla, trying to sound casual while making a kind of invitation he never imagined himself making. So, my mother would like to meet you. Your mother? Layla's voice came through the phone, clearly surprised. Derek, last night was literally our first date, and it wasn't even a real date. It was more like a controlled accident. I know, but she insists she wants to have lunch on Sunday. At your house. At the family mansion, yes. There was a long pause. Derek, Are you inviting me to meet your rich and powerful mother at the family mansion after a date where I spilled juice on your suit? When you say it like that, it sounds even stranger. Sounds? It's completely crazy. Like reality show level crazy. Derek laughed. Is Josh there? Ask him if he wants to meet my mother. He heard Layla covering the phone and talking to her son. After a few minutes, she came back. He said yes, but only if there's good dessert and if he gets to wear his suit again. I think we can arrange both. All right then, but just so you know, I don't know how to act in mansions, and Josh asks a lot of questions. Like a lot. My mother will love that. Are you sure she won't throw me out after my first joke about rich people? I'm sure she'll love you exactly for those jokes. On Sunday, Layla stood in front of the Monroe mansion, holding Josh's hand and trying not to look completely out of place. The building was stunning. 3 stories of red brick, perfectly trimmed gardens, and an entrance that looked like something out of a period movie. Mom, is this a castle? Josh asked wide-eyed. No, honey, it's just a big house. Very, very big. Like shopping mall big? Almost. The door opened before they even reached the entrance. Derek appeared, wearing dress pants and a casual shirt that probably cost more than Layla's monthly rent. Right on time, he said, smiling. Always. Josh nearly had a heart attack when he saw the house. I thought he was going to ask the building for an autograph. Can I play in the garden? Josh asked, already running toward the perfectly trimmed bushes. Sure, but don't pull anything out, Layla shouted. Derek led her inside, and Layla felt like she was walking into a museum. Everything was elegant, expensive, and intimidating. My mother is in the dining room, Derek said. Derek, I need to warn you about something before I meet her. What? I get nervous around important people. And when I'm nervous, I talk too much. And when I talk too much, I sometimes blurt out truths that are embarrassing. Like what? Like saying the house is bigger than my whole neighborhood. Or asking how much it costs to maintain a garden this size. Or, Layla, yes, breathe. It's going to be fine. They walked toward the dining room, and Layla could hear Josh playing in the garden. When they entered the room, she saw an elegant woman with perfectly styled silver hair, dressed in an outfit that shouted sophistication in every stitch. Mom, this is Layla. Layla, my mother, Eleanor Monroe. Eleanor stood up with a warm smile and extended her hands. Layla, so nice to meet you. Derek has told me wonderful things about you. He has. Layla looked at Derek surprised. I hope he mentioned that I'm a walking disaster. He did, and I loved it. Really? Of course. Finally, someone who doesn't pretend to be perfect. Where's Josh? Exploring your garden. He promised not to pull anything, but I can't guarantee he won't try to climb a tree. Eleanor laughed, and Layla relaxed a little. Good. This house needs more life. Derek's always been so proper. Mom, Derek warned. What? It's true. You never broke a vase, like never made a mess. Never had friends overplay. So serious. Ah, so that's why he looks like someone who eats etiquette manuals for breakfast, Layla said without thinking. The silence lasted 2 seconds before Eleanor burst out laughing. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Derek shook his head, but was smiling. They headed to the table, and the conversation flowed naturally when Josh ran in. Mom, there's a pool outside that's bigger than our living room. Josh, whisper when you're in someone else's house, Layla said. Nonsense, said Eleanor. Josh, would you like to see the library? It has books with pictures of dragons. Dragons? Really? As Eleanor took Josh to explore the house, Layla and Derek were left alone in the room. Your mother is surprising, said Layla. Not the reaction I expected, Derek admitted. And what reaction were you expecting? Honestly, that she'd politely ask you to leave. That could still happen. Lunch hasn't even started yet. Derek was about to reply when they heard footsteps at the entrance. Eleanor appeared at the door with Josh, but they weren't alone. A blonde woman, dressed in an expensive outfit and wearing an expression full of contempt, entered the room like she owned it. Derek, darling, what a surprise to find you here. Layla recognized the tone immediately. It was the same one saleswomen used with her in fancy stores, fake and condescending. Derek stiffened. Vivian? And this must be the replacement, Vivian said, eyeing Layla from head to toe. Layla felt the air grow heavy in the room. Lunch had definitely gotten a lot more interesting and potentially disastrous. Derek, darling, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Eleanor frowned. Vivian, I don't recall inviting you to lunch. Oh, Mrs. Monroe, I was just passing by and thought I'd stop in. You know how much I enjoy our talks about charity and social events. Layla watched the look exchange between Derek and Vivian. It was obvious there was some history there, and judging by the way Derek's shoulders stiffened, it wasn't a pleasant one. Vivian, this is Layla, Derek said, his voice tense. Layla, Vivian Sterling. Vivian reached out a perfectly manicured hand, but her eyes scanned Layla like she was inspecting a second-hand item in a thrift store. Nice to meet you, Layla said, shaking her hand. Pretty dress. Looks expensive. Oh, it is? Valentino. But I'm sure you've never heard of the brand. Layla forced a smile. Actually, I have. I saw it in a magazine at the dentist's office, right next to a toothpaste ad. Eleanor covered a laugh with a cough, but Vivian didn't find it funny. So tell me, Layla, what do you do for a living? At the moment, I'm between jobs, but I've worked in lots of different places. How interesting, and where exactly? Derek stepped in. Vivian, I think. No, Derek let her answer. I am genuinely curious. Layla felt a chill in her stomach. There was something in Vivian's tone that made it clear she already knew the answer. Well, I've worked in stores. Offices, restaurants. Restaurants, Vivian exclaimed as if she had just struck gold. What a coincidence. I remember you. The silence in the room grew thick as molasses. Excuse me? Layla asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Bella Vista, downtown. You were a waitress there, weren't you? I went there for dinner with some friends 2 years ago. You spilled sauce on my purse. A Hermes, by the way. Layla swallowed hard. She remembered that night perfectly. Vivian had been unbelievably rude to the whole staff, complaining about everything from the food temperature to the speed of service. Oh yes, I remember. You were the customer who made 3 waitresses cry in one night. I just have high standards. Vivian replied, lifting her chin. And now here you are, at the Monroe's home, sitting at their table. What an interesting progression. Vivian, Derek said, his voice dangerously low, but Vivian was just getting started. No, Vidic, it's fascinating. A waitress who spills sauce manages to slip into one of the most respected families in Boston. I have to admit, it's a creative strategy. Layla felt her face heat up. Josh chose that exact moment to come running in from the library. Mom, Mrs. Eleanor, show me a book with dragons that talk. That's great. Honey, Layla said, trying to keep her voice calm. Vivian looked at Josh like he was a particularly annoying bug. And this must be the little accessory? She said with a poisonous smile. Excuse me, Layla said, standing up. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Single mom, cute child, lonely CEO. It's practically a step-by-step guide on how to catch a rich man. You must have planned it all, from the accidental meeting to bringing the kid along to melt his heart. The silence that followed was so deep Layla could hear her own heartbeat. Vivian Sterling, Eleanor said, I suggest you leave my home. Now. But Vivian wasn't finished. Mrs. Monroe, I just think you should know who your son is getting involved with. This woman is clearly an opportunist. Waitresses don't belong in our circles. Layla looked around the room. Eleanor was furious. Derek looked like he was about to explode, and Josh was staring at her with those big, confused eyes. You know what, Vivian? Layla said, forcing a smile. You're right. I really was a waitress. And you know why? Because I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Because I worked to support my son. Because I'm proud to earn my own money, even if it means serving people who think they're better than me. She took Josh's hand. And you know the difference between you and me? I sleep well at night, knowing I'm a decent person. Vivian let out a sarcastic laugh. What a touching speech. But that doesn't change the fact that you don't belong in this world. You're right, Layla said, picking up her purse. I don't belong. Josh, let's go. But Mom, I wanted to see more dragons. We'll see dragons at home, honey, on the tablet. Derek stood up so fast his chair nearly fell over. Layla, wait. But she was already walking out of the room, pulling Josh by the hand. She crossed the entrance hall with quick steps, trying to keep her dignity while feeling her eyes burn. Layla, it was Derek's voice behind her. She stopped at the door, but didn't turn around. You don't have to say anything, Derek. She's right. I don't belong in your world. She's wrong. Completely wrong. Layla turned around. Derek was standing just a few feet away with an expression she had never seen on him before. Anger, determination, and something else she couldn't quite name. Vivian is a bitter person who can't accept that someone might be genuine, he went on. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, especially not to her. Derek, no, let me say this. In 32 years, you're the first person who's made me laugh for real. The first person who treated me like a regular human being. The first person who made me want to be better. Eleanor appeared at the door just as Vivian was being escorted out by a staff member. Layla, dear, please don't let that viper ruin our lunch. I was enjoying getting to know you and Josh. Mrs. Monroe, I appreciate that, but no buts. Vivian Sterling is a despicable creature who's been thrown out of 3 country clubs for inappropriate behavior. You, on the other hand, are exactly the kind of person this family needs. Josh tugged on Layla's skirt. Mom, why was that lady mean to you? Layla knelt down to his level. Sometimes, sweetheart, people are mean when they're scared or jealous. She was jealous of you? Maybe. Well, she should be. You're the coolest mom in the world. Derek smiled. I couldn't agree more. Layla looked at the 3 of them. Eleanor with her protective, motherly expression. Derek with that genuine smile she was starting to fall for. And Josh, who always knew the right thing to say to make everything better. All right, she said finally. But if another crazy ex-girlfriend shows up, I'm running and not coming back. Deal, Derek said, laughing. They went back to the dining room, and the conversation gradually returned to the light, easy tone from earlier. Josh was telling Derek all about the dragons from his books. Eleanor was asking Layla about her favorite recipes, and Derek seemed more relaxed than she had ever seen him. That's when Josh, right in the middle of the story about his Buzz Lightyear toy, casually said, Oh, and Derek, if you ever want to visit us, just go to Miss Landlady's house and take the stairs down. We live in the basement apartment. It's small, but there's a little window where you can see people's feet walking on the sidewalk. Derek froze, his fork midair. You live in a basement? It's really cool, Josh went on, completely unaware of the new tension in the room. Miss Betty lets us use her kitchen sometimes. And when it rains a lot, just a little bit of water comes in. But that's fun because I can play pirate and make boats. Layla closed her eyes. The silence after Josh's comment about the basement was so heavy she could feel the weight of Derek's and Eleanor's eyes on her. She tried to force a casual smile, like living in a damp basement was the most normal thing in the world. Josh, sweetie, you don't need to tell all the details about our home, she said, trying to keep her tone light. But it's nice, Mom, and Miss Betty makes cookies sometimes. Derek set his fork down, clearly disturbed by what he had just heard. Layla, do you really live in a basement? Technically, it's a garden-level apartment, she corrected, with a forced smile. With its own entrance and everything. Kind of like a, underground loft. Eleanor frowned. Dear, that can't be safe for a child. It is safe, Layla said quickly. Miss Betty is sweet, and the neighborhood is quiet. And besides, it's what I can afford. Derek leaned forward. How much do you make from the work you do? Layla hesitated. Talking about money always made her uncomfortable, especially around people who clearly never had to worry about bills at the end of the month. Well, I do a few gigs, work at events, sometimes help out in temporary offices, sell a few things online. It's enough to get by, you know? And living in the basement, the garden-level apartment, I don't pay much rent, so there's more left for the basics. Basics, Derek repeated, as if trying to understand a foreign concept. Food, clothes for Josh, school supplies. Just normal stuff for regular people. Eleanor shook her head, visibly concerned. And your sister? The one who was actually supposed to go on the date? Does she live with you? Riley? Oh no, she lives with our grandma. Grandma Helen has a big house and loves the company. And why don't you live there too? Derek asked. Layla let out a laugh. Because my grandma is, let's say, very opinionated and bossy. If I move in with her, I'll have to listen to her constantly saying I need to get married, that Josh needs a father figure, that I should wear more makeup, and that I should find a real husband. Josh made a face. Grandma Helen talks really loud and always asks when Mommy's going to get a boyfriend. Exactly. And I don't want to be a burden. Besides, independence is important, even if it's a little damp sometimes. Derek stayed. quiet for a moment, clearly thinking. Eleanor watched the exchange with growing interest. Layla, Derek finally said, I have a proposal for you. Oh, she muttered. When rich men make proposals, I usually take that as a sign to run. Eleanor laughed. Don't be so dramatic, dear. I have an apartment, Derek continued, ignoring the comment. It's where I lived before moving into my current loft. It's empty, fully furnished, and in a safe neighborhood. Layla looked at him, skeptical. Derek? You and Josh could stay there, temporarily, until you get more settled. That sounds dangerously close to charity. It's not charity. It's practical concern. Josh should have a safe place to play without worrying about leaks. Layla crossed her arms. And what do you get out of it? Derek thought for a moment. Well, I need help with a charity event for the company. Someone creative, good with people. You could work with me on it. A real job. Paid. Oh, said Layla, relaxing a bit. So it would be a trade? Exactly. You help me with the event. I provide a safe place for you two to live. Everybody wins. Josh clapped his hands. Can I have my own room? Josh. Layla scolded. Yes, you can, Derek said, smiling at the boy, with a real bed and everything. Layla looked around the table. Eleanor was smiling encouragingly. Josh was practically buzzing with excitement, and Derek had that sincere look she was starting to trust. All right, she said finally, but with a few conditions. Which ones? First, I pay the bills. Electricity, water, internet. Second, I clean the apartment. Third, if at any point this gets weird or uncomfortable, I leave. No drama. Agreed. And fourth, she pointed her finger at him. No trying to save me or turn me into some fancy society lady. I am who I am. Derek smiled. I wouldn't change a thing about you. 3 days later, Layla was sitting in a conference room at Monroe & Associates, a room bigger than her entire old apartment. Derek had explained that the charity event was to raise funds for children's education programs, and she was going through past proposals. So, she said, flipping through the papers, you usually host fancy dinners where rich people give speeches about how important it is to help underprivileged kids? Basically, yes, Derek admitted. And does that actually work? Define work. Do people really care, or do they just want their photo in the paper? Derek stopped typing and looked at her. Are you always this direct? Always. It's a flaw or a strength, depends on who you ask. I think it's a strength. Layla felt her neck warm up. Well, here's my opinion. You need to stop doing boring events. No one connects emotionally with numbers on a spreadsheet. And what do you suggest? A fair, with games, fun activities, good food. Bring the kids you're trying to help. Let people meet them in person. Derek leaned forward, interested. Go on. Set up stations where the kids can show what they're learning. Art, science, music. Let donors take part, not just sit and watch. Oh, and no long speeches. People have short attention spans. That's brilliant, Derek said, genuinely impressed. It's obvious, Layla corrected. You were just thinking like business people, not like regular folks. They spent the whole afternoon planning. Derek was fascinated by Layla's ability to come up with creative solutions for problems he didn't even know existed. And Layla found herself surprised that Derek, once he relaxed, was actually very funny. Have you ever organized events before? He asked as they scribbled ideas on a whiteboard. Josh's birthday parties, school cookouts, a few small things, nothing fancy. Well, you have a natural talent for it. They were so focused, they didn't even realize how close they'd gotten. When Layla turned to point at something on the board, she almost bumped into Derek. For a moment, they were very close, and Layla caught the scent of his cologne. Sorry, she murmured, stepping back. You don't have to apologize, he said, his voice softer than usual. The moment was broken when Derek's phone rang, but Layla felt that. Something had shifted between them. Later, during a coffee break, Derek mentioned casually, I understand Josh more than you might think. What do you mean? Growing up without a father. Mine died when I was 7. Layla looked at him, surprised. Derek, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Accident. Rainy night. A drunk driver. He stirred his coffee distractedly. My mom never remarried. She said she couldn't love anyone after him. That must have been hard. It was, and sometimes I wonder if I ended up just like her. Closed off, work-focused, avoiding emotional connections. Layla gently touched his hand. You're not closed off, Derek. You just protect your heart. That's different. He looked down at their hands, and Layla felt that same strange flutter in her stomach. Thank you, he said simply. By the end of the day, Layla was exhausted but energized. She had forgotten how good it felt to work on something that truly mattered. Derek drove her home to the apartment that was now temporarily hers, and there was Riley waiting at the door. Little sister? Riley shouted, running to hug her. I need to hear all about this craziness. After Josh was asleep, the two sisters sat in the kitchen with a bottle of cheap wine Riley had brought. So let me get this straight, Riley said, trying not to laugh. You went on a date at my place, spilled juice on the richest guy in Boston. He liked you. His mom adored you. One of his exes tried to humiliate you, and now you're living in his apartment planning charity events? When you put it like that, it sounds even crazier. Layla, this isn't crazy. This is like a modern-day fairy tale. Except for the evil ex part. It's not a fairy tale, Riley. It's just complicated. Complicated how? Do you like him? Layla took a sip of wine. Maybe. A little. Possibly more than a little. Riley shrieked so loudly, Josh appeared at the bedroom door. Are you okay, Mom? We're fine, sweetheart. Aunt Riley's just being dramatic. After Josh went back to bed, Riley grabbed Layla's shoulders. Sis, you're falling for the CEO. I'm not falling for him. I'm just interested. Cautiously interested. Same thing. Oh, Grandma's going to flip when she hears this. Grandma is not going to hear about it, because you're not going to tell her. Of course I'm going to tell her. This is the best family gossip in decades. Layla buried her face in her hands. My life has turned into a romantic comedy. A really good romantic comedy, Riley corrected, with a guaranteed happy ending. How can you be so sure? Because, little sister, any man who makes you smile like that is definitely a keeper. Layla smiled despite herself. Maybe Riley was right. Maybe this really was the start of something special. 2 weeks after moving into Derek's apartment, Layla discovered something surprising. The most serious CEO in Boston had a hidden talent for building pillow forts. No, Josh, Derek said, with the seriousness of someone negotiating $1 million deal. The couch pillow goes on the bottom. If you put on top, the whole structure will collapse. But I want it to be really tall, Josh protested, waving a smaller pillow. Tall is good, but stable is better. Look, I'll show you. Layla watched from the kitchen, trying not to laugh, as Derek, wearing a $3,000 suit, crawled across the living room floor explaining engineering principles to a 5-year-old. You know, she said, stepping into the doorway with 3 glasses of juice. When you offered the apartment, you didn't mention it came with child-friendly architecture services. Derek looked at her, hair tousled, with a genuinely happy expression. Josh is a demanding client. You want a fort that's also a spaceship. And a castle, Josh added seriously, and a superhero base. Of course, Layla said, sitting down on the floor with him. Basic requirements for any good structure. And that's how Derek Monroe, the man who intimidated seasoned executives, spent his Saturday afternoon building what Josh named the super-secret castle space fort. In the days that followed, Derek started showing up at the apartment, more often than work really required. Always with an excuse, bringing papers, discussing event details, checking if they were comfortable. But Layla noticed he always came around dinner time, and he always brought ice cream. Mr. Ice Cream is here. Josh would yell every time the doorbell rang, running to the door like an excited puppy. Josh, he has a name, Layla would say, trying to teach basic manners. I know, Derek Mr. Koff Ice Cream Monroe. Derek laughed so hard that Layla gave up trying to correct him. You know, she said one evening, as Derek helped Josh with a dinosaur puzzle, you don't have to bring dessert every time you come over. I don't bring dessert, Derek protested. I bring ice cream. That's completely different. How is it different? Dessert is formal, something you eat after dinner. Ice cream is happiness in frozen form. Josh looked at him with admiration. Mr. Ice Cream, you're really smart. Thank you, Josh. You're really smart, too. I know. My mom said I'd take after her. Layla nearly choked on her juice. Josh. What? It's true. You always say I'm smart like you. Derek looked at Layla with a smile that made butterflies flutter in her stomach. He really does take after you. Their routine began to form naturally. Derek would show up after work. They'd have dinner together, always with Layla insisting on cooking to pay for his visits. And then Josh would pull him off to play. It was during one of those play sessions that Layla discovered Derek knew all the lines from Toy Story by heart. To infinity and beyond, he shouted, making Buzz Lightyear fly across the room. How do you know that? Layla asked, amazed. Derek turned a bit red. I may have watched a few kids' movies. For research, to better understand the children, our event is going to help. Research, she repeated, trying not to laugh. Research, he confirmed firmly. And did that research include memorizing songs from Frozen? Definitely not. Josh started singing Let It Go, and Derek automatically joined in. Layla laughed so hard she had to sit down. Okay, I admit it, Derek finally said. I may have developed a soft spot for animated movies. They're surprisingly well made. They're fun, Derek. You can admit you're having fun. I am having fun, he said like he was making a groundbreaking confession. See, that didn't hurt. It was in those moments that Layla saw glimpses of the man Derek could have been if he hadn't carried so much weight on his shoulders since he was a child. He laughed easily, made silly jokes, and looked genuinely happy one night. After Josh had gone to bed, they sat in the living room talking about the charity event. Registrations are going well, Derek said, showing her the numbers on his tablet. I think your idea for the fair is going to work. Of course it will. Kids are irresistible when they're just being themselves. Like Josh. Exactly. He has a gift for making people fall in love with him in 5 minutes. Derek was quiet for a moment. He's not the only one. Layla felt her heart race. Derek? Sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Why not? Because it complicates things. Because you work with me. Because Josh is starting to get attached, and I don't want to hurt him. Because I don't know how to do this right. Layla moved closer to him on the couch. Do what right? This. Us. Whatever this is. You know what I think? What? I think you overthink everything. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you stop trying to control everything. Derek looked at her, and for a moment, Layla thought he was going to kiss her. But then the doorbell rang. Who could that be at this hour? She murmured, glancing at the clock. It was almost 9 at night. Derek frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. Layla went to the intercom. Hello. Layla. It's me, Vivian. I heard Derek is there. I need to talk to him. It's urgent. Layla's blood ran cold. Derek stood up from the couch like he'd been shocked. Vivian, he murmured. Do you want me to let her up? Layla asked, hand still on the intercom. Derek ran his hands through his hair. We better find out what she wants. 5 minutes. Later, Vivian walked into the apartment like she owned the place. Derek, darling, she said, completely ignoring Layla. You look wonderful. Vivian, what are you doing here? I came to warn you about something important. She finally looked at Layla. About your new little friend. Watch your tone, Derek, said his voice dangerously low. No need to be defensive, Derek. I just think you should know the truth. Vivian opened a folder she had brought and took out some papers. I did a little background check on Layla here, and I found some very interesting things. What kind of things? Layla asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Well, for starters, you looked up Derek online before your date. You saw pictures, read articles about the family's fortune. You knew exactly who he was. Derek looked at Layla, confused. Is that true? Yes, but it wasn't. And more, Vivian went on, clearly enjoying the effect of her revelations. You have a history of relationships with older, financially stable men. That's not true, Layla protested. Isn't it? What about Michael Patterson? Divorced, owns an accounting firm. You dated him for 6 months. Layla felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. How do you? I have resources, dear. And the conclusion is obvious. You're using Josh to manipulate Derek's feelings. It's a classic setup. Derek was looking at Layla like he didn't know her. Vivian, that's ridiculous, he said. But there was uncertainty in his voice. Is it? Then why didn't she say she already knew who you were? Why did you bring her son on the very first date? Because she's a clever opportunist. Layla felt tears burning in her eyes. Derek, you know that's not true. But his expression had changed. The doubt was there now. Vivian smiled triumphantly. I thought you should know, Derek. And with that final blow, she left the apartment, leaving Layla and Derek in a devastating silence. The silence in the apartment was so heavy, Layla could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock. Derek stood in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets, wearing an expression she had never seen before. Distant, cold, calculating. "So," he said finally, "is it true you looked me up before the date?" Layla took a deep breath. Lying now would only make things worse. "Yes, it's true, but it wasn't." "And you didn't think it was important to mention that?" "Derek, let me explain." "Explain what, Layla?" "That you knew exactly who I was from the start. That you pretended it to be surprised when you found out I was the CEO. It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" Layla felt frustration rising in her throat. "When Riley told me about the date, yes, I did look you up. Anyone normal would. You think I'd meet a complete stranger without knowing anything about him? I have a child to protect. But you pretended you didn't know me. Because I didn't know you. Seeing a picture online isn't the same as knowing someone, Derek. I looked you up expecting to find some arrogant playboy I could scare off in 5 minutes. Instead, I found you." Derek shook his head. "And what about Michael Patterson? Was Vivian right about him too?" Layla sighed. "Michael was my boyfriend 2 years ago. Yes, he was older and financially stable. You know why? Because I'm a single mom and I have to think about stability for my son. So you have a type." "A type?" "Derek, I dated Michael because he was a decent man who treated Josh well. Not because he had money. And you know how it ended? He wanted me to stop working and be a submissive housewife. I told him to get lost and went back to being alone." Derek ran his hands through his hair, clearly upset. "How'd I know you're not doing the same thing with me?" "Because you know me." Layla burst out. 2 weeks living here, Derek. 2 weeks of seeing me cook, clean, work on the event, play with Josh. Do you think I'm that good of an actress? I don't know what to think anymore. Then think about this. If I only wanted your money, do you think I'd be here arguing with you? I'd have agreed with everything you said, made you feel amazing, and try to get you to marry me." Derek didn't say anything, but Layla could see the doubts still there. "Instead," she went on, "I called you a workaholic on our first date, made jokes about your rich lifestyle, and insisted on paying my own bills. What kind of gold digger does that? Maybe a very smart one." The words hit like a slap. Layla felt the air leave the room. "Wow," she said, her voice tight. "So that's what you really think of me." Derek realized he had gone too far, but his wounded pride held him back. "Layla, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did, and you know what? Maybe Vivian is right. Maybe I really don't belong in your world." That was when Josh appeared in the bedroom doorway, rubbing his eyes and holding his Buzz Light ear. "Why are you yelling?" he asked sleepily. Layla and Derek looked at each other, realizing the argument had gotten louder than they thought. "We're not yelling, sweetheart," Layla said, trying to soften her voice. "Go back to bed." But Josh was too smart to be fooled. He looked at Derek with big, confused eyes. "Mr. Ice Cream, are you mad at Mommy?" Derek knelt down to the boy's level. "No, Josh, I'm not mad." "Then why are you talking like people on TV when they're getting divorced?" The innocent question hit them both hard. Layla felt tears welling in her eyes. "Josh, Derek and I are just friends. Friends sometimes disagree." "But you're crying," the boy said, walking over to Layla, and Mr. Ice Cream looked sad. Derek looked at Josh and then at Layla. For a moment, his expression softened, but then he remembered Vivian's words about the evidence and that feeling of being deceived. "Josh," he said, standing up, "I have to go now." "Are you coming back tomorrow?" the boy asked, hopeful. Derek hesitated. I don't know." Josh started to cry. Not the dramatic kind of crying kids do when they want something, but quiet, heartbreaking tears. The kind that come when you're losing something important. "You don't like us anymore?" he asked, clinging to Derek's leg. "It's not that, Josh." "Then why don't you want to play with me anymore?" "Did I do something wrong?" Layla knelt down and hugged her son. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Sometimes adults make things more complicated than they need to be." Derek looked at the two of them, his heart breaking, but stubbornness and pain still winning. "I have to go," he said, grabbing his coat. "Derek, please." Layla tried, but he was already walking out the door. Layla stayed on the floor, holding Josh, listening to Derek's footsteps echoing down the hallway. When the elevator doors closed, she finally let the tears fall. "Mommy, did we make Mr. Ice Cream leave?" Josh asked between sobs. "No, honey. Sometimes people leave not because we did something wrong, but because they're scared. Scared of getting hurt, scared of trusting, scared of loving." That night, after Josh finally fell asleep, Layla stayed up packing. She couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. It was clear that Derek believed Vivian's lies, and she wasn't going to stay where she wasn't welcome. Meanwhile, Derek was in his loft, staring at the wall, trying to understand why he felt so empty. He had made the right decision, hadn't he? Protected himself from someone who might be using him? Then why did it feel like he had just lost the most important thing in his life? He tried to work, but couldn't focus. He turned on the TV, but every channel seemed to be showing kids' shows. He tried to sleep, but all he could hear was Josh's voice asking if he'd come back tomorrow. Derek Monroe, the CEO, who never showed weakness, found himself crying for the second time in his adult life. The first time had been at his father's funeral. This was much worse. The next day, while Derek was trying to return to his regular routine at the office, Eleanor Monroe was at the family mansion receiving an unexpected visitor. The man at the door was thin, nervous, and holding a worn leather briefcase. "Mrs. Monroe, my name is Robert Chun. I'm a private investigator. I need to speak with you about a job I did for Vivian Sterling." Eleanor invited him in, intrigued. "About what exactly, Mr. Chun?" "About Layla Parker, and about how I was pressured to exaggerate some information." Eleanor sat down in the armchair, suddenly very interested. "Go on." Robert opened the briefcase with trembling hands. "Vivian Sterling paid me to look into Layla Parker's life. I did find some real information, like her past with Michael Patterson and the fact she looked up your son online. But Miss Sterling, she wanted more." "More of what?" "She wanted me to fake evidence that Layla was a serial gold digger. She threatened to report me for illegal practices if I didn't go along. I have a family, Mrs. Monroe. I needed the money." Eleanor felt anger rise in her like volcanic lava. "Are you telling me the accusations against Layla were fake?" "Partially. Most of it was made up or twisted. Layla Parker is not a gold digger, Mrs. Monroe. She's just a mother trying to survive." Eleanor stood up and walked to the window. "Mr. Chun, you're going to repeat every word of this to my son. And after that, the three of us are going to have a serious talk with Vivian Sterling." Robert Chun nodded, relieved to finally speak the truth. But was it too late to undo the damage? Derek was at the office, trying to focus on financial reports, when his assistant announced that his mother was on her way up. He frowned. Eleanor never came to the office without calling first. She entered the room accompanied by a nervous-looking man Derek didn't recognize. "Mom, what's going on?" "Derek, this is Robert Chun, a private investigator. He has some very interesting things to tell you about Vivian Sterling." Derek leaned back in his chair, suspicious. "Mom, I'm really not in the mood for." "Sit down and listen," Eleanor said in that tone that left no room for argument. Robert Chun cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Monroe, I was hired by Vivian Sterling to investigate Layla Parker. What I found, well, part of it was true, but a lot of it was fabricated." "What do you mean, fabricated?" Robert opened the briefcase and showed him some documents. "It's true that she looked you up online. It's true that she dated Michael Patterson, but Vivian Sterling pressured me to exaggerate the rest, to suggest there was a pattern of gold-digging behavior that simply doesn't exist." Derek felt his stomach twist. "Go on." "Mr. Monroe, I looked deeply into Layla Parker's life. She worked as a waitress, a sales clerk, a nanny, did all kinds of jobs to support her son. She never accepted government help when she could work. She never took anyone to court for child support. She never tried to take advantage of wealthy men." Eleanor leaned forward. "Tell him the part about Michael." Robert flipped through his papers. "Michael Patterson. They dated for 6 months. He wanted her to stop working and live off of him. She ended the relationship because, in her own words, recorded in a conversation with her sister, "I'd rather starve than lose my independence." Derek swallowed hard. "And why did Vivian do this?" "She told me you belonged to her, that she had invested too much time in your relationship and wasn't going to let some nobody ruin her plans." Eleanor slammed her hand on the table. "That snake? Derek, do you realize what you've done?" Derek ran his hands over his face. "I messed everything up." "Messed up? You destroyed it. You took a genuine, honest woman who was falling in love with you and treated her like she was after your money." "Mom, don't mom me." "Robert, you can go. Thank you for having the decency to tell us the truth." After the investigator left, Eleanor gave her son a look he hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Derek Monroe, If you let that woman get away, you're a bigger fool than I thought. I know, Mom. I know I made a terrible mistake. Mistake? Derek, you broke her heart. And Josh's too. That little boy adores you, and you just vanished from his life. Derek stood up, pacing. What do I do now? How do I fix this? Go after her. Ask for forgiveness. Beg if you have to. And hope she's more generous than you deserve. Derek didn't waste a second. He left the office like it was on fire and drove straight to the apartment, the one he had offered to. Layla and Josh. When he got there, he ran up the stairs two at a time. He knocked on the door, called Layla's name, but there was only silence. He used the spare key he had kept. The apartment was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of life. The furniture was all there, but the toys Josh used to leave in the living room were gone. The crayon drawings on the fridge were gone. Layla's scent was no longer in the air. Derek walked into the room Josh had used. The bed was neatly made, but on the pillow was a folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, he opened it. It was a crayon drawing, 3 figures, a brown-haired woman, a small child, and a tall man in a suit, all of them smiling, holding hands. Below, in Josh's uneven handwriting, it said, "Mr. Ice Cream, find me when you want to be my dad for real." Derek sat down on the bed and cried, not caring about dignity or appearances. He picked up his phone and called Layla. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. 10 more times. All straight to voicemail. Then he remembered. She had mentioned living in a basement before moving into the apartment. Mrs. Betty's house. Derek jumped up and drove to the address listed in the company files. It was a modest neighborhood with small, well-kept homes. He found house number 847 and went down the stairs to the basement entrance. He knocked. Nothing. Knocked again. Harder. Still nothing. "Can I help you?" Derek turned around. A gray-haired woman stood at the back door of the main house. "Mrs. Betty? That's me. Who's asking?" "I'm Derek Monroe. I was a friend of Layla and Josh's. Are they home?" Mrs. Betty's expression changed immediately. "Oh, so you're the famous Mr. Ice Cream." "Yes, Are they here?" "No. They left yesterday morning." Layla was heartbroken. Poor thing. Josh wouldn't stop crying, asking where you were. Derek felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Did they say where they were going? Layla mentioned going back to her grandmother's house in Springfield. Said Boston had too many bad memories. Springfield, 2 hours away. "Thank you, Mrs. Betty." "Young man," she called out as he was already climbing the stairs. "I don't know what happened between you two, but that girl loves you. And Josh, that little boy talks about you like you're some kind of hero." Derek nodded, unable to speak. He got back in his car and drove straight to Springfield, calling his office on the way to cancel all of his appointments for the day. When he arrived in town, he realized he had no idea where to find Layla's grandmother. Springfield wasn't exactly a big city, but it was still large enough. He stopped at a gas station and asked the attendant if he knew a Parker family. "Parker? Oh, yes. Mrs. Helen Parker? Lives on Maple Street. Yellow house with a white picket fence. Everybody knows Mrs. Helen." Derek thanked him and followed the directions. The house was exactly as described. Yellow, with a spotless white fence and a garden that looked like it belonged in a magazine. He parked in front and sat in the car for a few minutes, rehearsing what to say. Sorry for being a jerk seemed like a good start. Derek stepped out, straightened his tie, and walked to the front door. He took a deep breath and rang the bell. Footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal a short, elderly woman with white hair and sharp eyes. "Can I help you?" "Mrs. Parker, my name is Derek Monroe. I'm looking for Layla and Josh." The woman's expression shifted to something between curiosity and suspicion. "Are you the CEO who broke my granddaughter's heart?" Derek swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am, and I'm here to try and fix what I broke." Layla's grandmother looked him up and down like a general inspecting soldiers. "All right," she said finally, and to Derek's surprise, she opened the door and invited him in. Grandma Helen Parker led Derek through the living room, filled with family photographs and furniture that clearly held decades of memories. "Have a seat," she said, pointing to a floral-patterned couch. "Coffee?" "Yes, please," Derek replied, trying to process the situation. Layla's grandmother was more intimidating than any executive he'd ever dealt with. "So, Helen said, returning with 2 cups. You're the man who made my granddaughter cry for 3 days straight. Derek lowered his head. Yes, ma'am. And I came here to make amends. I know. The thing is, they're not here. Derek looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Layla and Josh? They're not here, dear. Derek's heart dropped. But Mrs. Betty said that they came to Springfield, and they did. They stayed here for 2 days, with Layla crying and Josh asking every 5 minutes when Mr. Ice Cream was coming. Helen sighed. It was heartbreaking. So where are they now? Layla got a job, children's party entertainer in Hartwell, the next town over. She said it was better that way, that starting fresh in a new place would help her forget you. Derek stood up, anxious. Is Hartwell far? 20 minutes by car. But Derek, Helen placed a hand on his arm. Are you sure about this? Because if you show up there and then change your mind again, it's better for everyone if you just leave now. Derek looked at Layla's grandmother with all the sincerity he could muster. Mrs. Parker, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I love your granddaughter, and I love Josh like he's my own son. If she gives me a second chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve it. Helen studied him for a moment, then smiled. Good answer. Now go after my girl. As Derek drove toward Hartwell, Layla was standing in the middle of a suburban backyard, dressed like a rainbow fairy and trying to keep 15 6-year-olds entertained. And now, she said, waving a toy wand, let's do some magic. Everyone close your eyes and count to 3. The children followed her instructions, and Layla took the chance to blow bubbles into the air. 1, 2, 3. Open your eyes. The children's joyful screams made Layla smile, even if it was a tired smile. A week ago, working with kids brought her joy. Now, every happy laugh reminded her of Josh asking when Derek would come back. Fairy lady, a little girl said, are you sad? No, sweetheart. Just a little tired. My mom gets like that when she fights with my dad. But they always make up after. Layla felt her chest tighten. If only it were that simple. Everyone, the birthday girl's mom called. A special surprise just arrived. Layla frowned. She hadn't scheduled any extra surprises. What do you think it is? What the kids asked. That's when they saw it. A tall man in a full ice cream mascot costume walking into the yard. The outfit was complete. Giant vanilla ice cream head, cone-shaped body, the whole thing. The kids went wild. Ice cream! Ice cream! They shouted. Running toward the mascot, Layla stood frozen. There was something familiar about the way the mascot moved, the posture, the way he waved to the kids. It couldn't be. The mascot walked toward her, and even through the costume, Layla could feel he was looking straight at her. Hi, kids, said a muffled voice from inside the costume. Who here likes ice cream? Layla froze. It was Derek's voice. Me, the kid shouted. And who here knows a very special fairy named Layla? The kids looked confused, but Layla felt her knees go weak. Derek? She whispered, too quietly for the children to hear. The mascot came closer. Kids, he said, can you help me with something very important? Yes, they shouted in unison. I need to ask someone very special to forgive me. Do you think she'll forgive me? Yes, they answered, thinking it was all part of the game. Derek, because it was definitely Derek inside that costume, turned to Layla. And what about you, Fairy Layla? Do you think you could forgive a very sorry ice cream? Layla felt tears burning in her eyes. Derek, what are you doing here? Trying to fix the biggest mistake of my life. The children were starting to get restless. Mr. Ice Cream, take off your head. We want to see your face, one boy shouted. Derek hesitated for a moment, then started removing the giant costume head. When his face appeared, messy hair, sweaty, but with the most sincere expression Layla had ever seen. The kids went quiet for a moment. Wow, one girl said, you're handsome. Derek ignored the comment and knelt down on the grass in front of Layla, still wearing the rest of the ice cream costume. Layla Parker, he said, his voice trembling. I came to ask for forgiveness from both of you. Derek, she began, but he raised his hand. Please, let me speak. I was an idiot. A proud, stubborn, blind idiot. Vivian lied, forged evidence, and I believed her because I was scared. Scared of what? Scared of being happy. Scared to trust. Scared to love, and then be left behind like when my dad died. The kids were listening like it was the best story they'd ever heard. But more than anything, Derek went on, I was scared I wasn't good enough for you and Josh. Because you both showed me what a real family is. You showed me that happiness isn't in bank accounts or business meetings. Layla wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. And where is Josh in all of this? Josh is... Derek paused, looking around. Actually, I was hoping he'd be here. He left a few minutes ago with my sister. She came to pick him up to spend a few days at Grandma's house because he refused to leave his room. He said he didn't want to play with anyone anymore because Mr. Ice Cream was gone forever. Derek closed his eyes, clearly in pain. I broke his heart. You did. And mine too. I know. And if you give me the chance, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. One of the kids tugged on Derek's costume. Mister, are you going to marry the fairy? Derek looked at Layla, his eyes full of hope. That depends. Fairy Layla, will you marry a very sorry ice cream? Layla laughed through her tears. Is that a marriage proposal? No, said Derek, pulling a small velvet box from the costume's pocket. This is... The kid screamed with joy as Derek opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. Layla Parker, will you marry me? And let Josh call me his real dad? Layla looked at the man kneeling in front of her, dressed as an ice cream, surrounded by kids shouting, say yes, and realized this was the most ridiculous and perfect moment of her life. Only if you promise never to doubt me again. I promise. And if you promise we'll have ice cream for breakfast at least once a month, I promise. And if you promise to be the best dad in the world for Josh. I promise, Derek said, his voice breaking with emotion. Layla held out her hand. Then yes, I'll marry you. The children erupted in celebration as Derek slipped the ring on Layla's finger and kissed her in the middle of the yard, still dressed as a giant ice cream cone. Now, said Layla, when they pulled apart, let's go get Josh. He needs to know Mr. Ice Cream came back. The return to Grandma Helen's house was epic. Derek was still wearing the ice cream costume when they walked in, and Josh, who was sitting sadly on the couch watching cartoons, jumped up like he'd seen a ghost. Mr. Ice Cream, he shouted, running into Derek's arms with so much force he almost knocked him over. Hey, buddy, Derek said, hugging Josh like his life depended on it. I missed you. You came back. You really came back. Mom said you had left forever. I'm never leaving again, Derek promised. In fact, I came to ask you something very important. Josh pulled back, curious. What? Derek knelt down again. Josh, will you let me be your real dad? The boy looked at Layla, who was smiling through her tears, then back at Derek, then at the ring on his mother's finger. Really? Like real dad? With a certificate and everything? Derek laughed. With a certificate and everything. Can I call you Dad instead of Mr. Ice Cream? You can. But can I still call you Mr. Ice Cream sometimes? Anytime you want. Josh jumped into Derek's arms again. Yes, I'm going to have a dad. Grandma Helen was watching the scene from the kitchen doorway, wiping her eyes with her apron. Well, she said finally, I think you two better take off those silly costumes and celebrate properly. I'm making a special dinner. A week later, they were back in Boston. Derek had insisted they stay at the Monroe Mansion until the wedding, and Eleanor was over the moon organizing everything. Sweetheart, she said to Layla at breakfast, what do you think about white and pink flowers for the decoration? I think anything will look nice, Eleanor. Honestly, I just want to marry your son. The rest is just decoration. So practical. Derek, you chose well. Derek smiled, spreading jam on Josh's toast. Dad, Josh said, can I bring Buzz Lightyear to the wedding? Of course, buddy. He'll be our ring bearer. That's when Derek's phone rang. It was his PR advisor, clearly in a panic. Derek, you need to see the news. Right now. What happened? Someone leaked the whole story to the press. The blind date, Layla, Josh, the engagement. It's all over the media. Derek turned on the kitchen TV and tuned into the local news channel. In a surprising twist, CEO Derek Monroe, heir to the Monroe fortune, is engaged to a single mother who works as a children's party entertainer. Oh no, Layla murmured. The report continued, showing footage of Layla working at the party. Someone had recorded the proposal, old pictures of her as a waitress, and even images of the apartment where they had lived. Sources suggest the relationship may have been a carefully planned scheme, considering the social class gap between them. That's ridiculous, Derek exploded. But the worst was still coming. The phone wouldn't stop ringing, reporters asking for interviews, acquaintances pretending to be concerned, and the comments on social media. "Layla," Derek said, turning off his phone for the 10th time, "don't read anything online." "Why? Is it that bad?" Eleanor, who was scrolling through her tablet, made a face. "Sweetheart, maybe it's better if you don't." But Layla had already grabbed the tablet. "Gold digger traps millionaire CEO using child as bait," she read out loud. "Seriously? Using a child as bait? What kind of person says that about a kid?" Josh, who was playing on the floor, looked up. "Mom, what's a gold digger?" "It's someone who—" "Ah, honey, it's just people saying nonsense." Derek was visibly furious. "This has to stop. Now," he called his advisor. "Schedule a press conference for this afternoon. I'm setting the record straight." "Derek, are you sure? That's going to bring even more attention." "I'm sure, and I want the whole family there." That afternoon, the press room at Monroe and Associates was packed. Reporters, photographers, TV cameras. It felt more like a circus than a press event. Derek walked in with Layla, Josh, and Eleanor. Layla was nervous, but tried to stay calm. "Good afternoon," Derek began, standing behind the microphone. "I called this conference to address some false information that's been circulating about my personal life." "Mr. Monroe," a reporter shouted, "is it true that Ms. Parker knew who you were before the first date?" "Yes, it's true. And you know why? Because she's a responsible mother who does research on people she's going to meet, something any parent should do." "But Mr. Monroe," another reporter pressed, "doesn't the social class difference raise questions about her intentions?" Derek took a deep breath. "You want to know about Layla Parker? I'll tell you. She's a woman who worked as a waitress, a sales clerk, a babysitter, a party entertainer, any honest job to support her son. She's never asked anyone for financial help. She made me laugh for the first time in years. She taught me that family isn't about money. It's about love." Layla felt tears in her eyes. "And more importantly," Derek continued, looking straight into the cameras, "she and Josh are my family, and I will protect my family from anyone who tries to harm them." The reaction in the room was instant. Derek Monroe, the famously private CEO, had just called a single mother and her child "my family" on national television. Mr. Monroe, a journalist, shouted, "Are you confirming the engagement?" Derek held Layla's hand. "I'm standing here confirming that I've found the two most important people in my life. And if that bothers anyone, that's your problem, not ours." Josh, who had been sitting quietly next to Eleanor, suddenly got up and ran to the microphone. "Can I say something?" Derek bent down to his level. "Of course, buddy." Josh stepped up to the microphone. "My daddy Derek is really cool. He builds pillow castles and knows all the songs from Frozen, and he makes my mommy laugh. So stop saying bad things about him." The room burst into awes and laughter. Even the most cynical journalist smiled. In the days that followed, the public reaction was surprisingly positive. Social media was filled with comments supporting the cutest couple of the year and the prince who chose love. But not everyone was happy about it. A week later, Layla was at the company office, working on the final details for the charity event, when she got an urgent call. "Layla, you need to come to the warehouse now," said Tom, the event supervisor. "There's been an accident." When she arrived, she found a devastating scene. All the event decorations were destroyed, popped balloons, torn banners, supplies scattered across the floor. "What happened here?" she asked, horrified. "We don't know," Tom said, avoiding her gaze. "But Layla, I've got bad news." "What bad news?" "The board decided it's better if you don't coordinate the event anymore. With all this media attention, they think your presence might distract from the charity's mission." Layla felt like she had been punched. "They're firing me? It's temporary, just until things settle down." Layla looked around at the wrecked warehouse, tears burning in her eyes. Someone had deliberately sabotaged her work, and now she was being punished for falling in love with the wrong man. Or maybe with a man who was too right. Layla walked out of the ruined warehouse with a mix of anger and determination she hadn't felt in years. She drove straight to the Monroe mansion, where she found Eleanor having tea in the garden. "Eleanor, I need your help," she said, her eyes still red. "Sweetheart, what happened? You look heartbroken." Layla told her about the sabotage and the dismissal. Eleanor listened quietly, but her expression grew more furious by the minute. Those cowards, she exploded. Firing you because of media attention? As if that's your fault. Eleanor, the event is tomorrow. They'll either cancel everything or turn it into one of those boring dinners they always do. The kids who are looking forward to it will be so disappointed. Eleanor stood up, determined. No, they won't. We're going to make this event happen. How? We don't have decorations. We don't have company approval. Layla, dear, you're talking to Eleanor Monroe. I've been running charity events for 30 years, and more importantly, I have a group of volunteers who love a good challenge. 2 hours later, the Monroe Mansion had become a full-blown command center. Eleanor had called all her high society friends, who arrived with cars full of decorations, food, and more energy than any professional planner could dream of. Margaret, did you bring the balloons? Eleanor shouted, got them, and Susan brought the folding tables. Layla watched the whirlwind of elegant women working like a construction crew, all determined to save the event. Eleanor, she said, this is amazing, but what about the venue? The company canceled the convention center. Eleanor smiled. Who needs a convention center when you have the Monroe Mansion garden? Your garden. But Eleanor, we're expecting over 200 people, and we'll welcome all of them in style. All night long, they worked. Layla felt like the director of a comedy movie, leading a mission that seemed impossible. Eleanor's friends turned out to be surprisingly creative and, more importantly, a lot of fun. Layla, said Margaret, a 60-year-old woman who was on a ladder decorating a tree. Derek made the right choice. Any woman who can get Eleanor to stay up working past 2 a.m. is special. On the morning of the event, Layla was nervous but confident. They had managed to turn the Monroe Garden into a child's wonderland. Colorful tents, activity stations, a small stage, and even a chocolate fountain. What if no one shows up? Layla asked Eleanor, as they adjusted the final details. Sweetheart, when Eleanor Monroe sends out last-minute invitations, people show up. And they did. Starting at 10 in the morning, families began to arrive. First slowly, then in waves, the children ran straight to the activities, and the parents looked visibly impressed with the setup. Layla was at the face-painting station when she saw Derek arrive. He stopped at the edge of the garden, clearly surprised by what he was seeing. Mom, Josh shouted, running toward her with his face painted like a superhero. Daddy, Derek is here. Derek walked closer, still trying to take it all in. Layla, what is all this? It's the charity event. Eleanor's garden version. But I thought you were. That they had fired me? They did. But no one told me I couldn't organize my own event. Derek smiled. That genuine smile she loved. You're amazing. I am stubborn. It's different. The event was a total success. The kids had more fun than at any formal event Derek had ever sponsored. There were dance performances, an impromptu talent show, and even a play put on by the children themselves. Layla was at the center of everything, coordinating activities, joking with the parents, organizing the performances. Derek watched from a distance, impressed by her natural leadership and charm. It was during the children's presentation that everything changed. An 8-year-old girl stepped onto the little stage and took the microphone. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma, and I want to thank Aunt Layla for making this event happen. The other kids began clapping, and soon the parents joined in. Aunt Layla is the coolest person in the world, Emma went on. She made us feel special. A spontaneous chant broke out, Layla, Layla, Layla. Layla blushed, trying to gesture for the kids to stop, but they pushed her up onto the stage. Guys, she began into the microphone, nervous. I just wanted you to have fun, because you're all amazing, each and every one of you. Tell a joke, Aunt Layla, a little boy shouted. Layla laughed. A joke? Okay. Why did the charity event cross the road? Why? The kids yelled. To get to the other side. Of generosity. The kids laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. You know, Layla continued, more at ease. I'm not rich. I don't have a mansion or fancy cars. But today, you made me feel like the richest person in the world. That was the moment Derek couldn't stand still anymore. He walked up to the stage, climbed the steps, and gently took the microphone from Layla's hands. Excuse me, he said to the crowd, which immediately quieted down. My name is Derek Monroe, and I need to say something. Layla looked at him, confused. This woman standing beside me, Derek continued, wrapping an arm around Layla's waist, was fired yesterday because someone thought she wasn't good enough to organize one of our company's events. Whispers of indignation spread through the crowd. Well, I have news. As of today, Layla Parker no longer works for Monroe and Associates. Layla felt her heart drop. She is now the executive director of the new Parker Monroe Foundation, dedicated exclusively to children's events, with an unlimited budget and full independence. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Layla stared at Derek, speechless. "Derek, what are you doing?" "I'm investing in the most talented woman I've ever met, and I'm showing everyone that when you mess with my family, you mess with me." He turned back to the crowd. "And one more thing, Layla Parker, will you marry me? Right here, right now, in front of all these wonderful people?" The garden went completely silent for 2 seconds, then exploded in the loudest cheer Derek had ever heard. Layla laughed, cried, and shouted yes into the microphone. And that's how the most spontaneous and heartwarming proposal of the year went viral online, with more than 10 million views in 24 hours. 5 months later, Layla was hiding behind a tree in Boston Central Park, peeking at her own wedding celebration and trying not to laugh at the scene in front of her. "Eleanor, the chairs are crooked," shouted Margaret, the same lady who had helped with the charity event. "Margaret, darling, it's a wedding in the park, not a military graduation," replied Eleanor, overseeing everything with the precision of a general. "But the photos will look terrible. The photos will look authentic, much better." Layla watched the two women argue over the arrangement of the colorful plastic chairs scattered across the lawn. Derek had insisted that the wedding be just like them, simple, fun, and full of children. "Lamb, are you hiding from your own party?" asked Riley, appearing beside her in a light pink dress and low heels, the only concession she had made to wedding protocol. "I'm not hiding. I am observing strategically." "Uh-huh. And what's your strategy?" "Not tripping over the dress, not crying off my makeup, and making sure Josh doesn't release the rings too early." Riley laughed. "He's super nervous. He's been practicing his speech for a week." "Josh is giving a speech? You didn't know?" "Derek taught him. Apparently, it's going to be about how he got a dad and how you two are the best team in the universe." Layla felt her eyes fill with tears. "Oh no, it hasn't even started yet, and I'm already crying." "Hey," Riley said, holding her sister's shoulders. "You deserve this. After everything you've been through, you deserve a fairy tale ending." "It's not a fairy tale, Riley. It's better. It's real." Derek appeared on the other side of the park, wearing a light gray suit and talking with the pastor they'd chosen, a young, easygoing man who officiated outdoor weddings. "Wow," Riley murmured. "Your fiancé looks wow." "Stop staring at my husband," Layla said, laughing. "He's not your husband yet. And I can look, I just can't touch. Will you two stop hiding?" Eleanor shouted from a distance. "We've got a wedding to start." The ceremony was exactly what Layla had dreamed of, if she had ever known how to dream up something so perfect. The colorful chairs were filled with an eclectic mix of guests, suited executives sitting next to children from the foundation in their best clothes, high society friends chatting happily with Layla's coworkers, and in the middle of it all, Grandma Helen, wearing a bright purple hat and a smile that lit up the entire park. Josh sat in the front row, holding a little pillow with the rings tied on with colorful ribbons, practicing his official ring bearer stance. "Now remember," Eleanor said, as she took her place beside the pastor, "I hand the rings to Josh, and Josh gives them to the pastor." "That's it. What if I drop them?" Josh asked, nervous. "Then we pick them up and keep going," Derek said, kneeling beside him. "Weddings are about love, not perfection." The music began. Not the traditional wedding march, but a whole new world from Aladdin, Josh's personal choice, which Derek had approved instantly. Layla appeared at the end of the makeshift aisle, and Derek felt like he was seeing her for the first time. Her dress was simple, white, knee-length, with short sleeves, and a cut that made her look beautiful without being flashy. But it was her smile that took his breath away. She walked down the aisle alone because she had insisted. "I don't need to be given away. I know exactly where I want to be." When she reached the small altar, Derek took her hands. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," she replied. "You ready for this?" "Born ready." The pastor smiled. "Dear friends, we're gathered here today to celebrate not only the union of Derek and Layla, but the creation of a family. A family built not by chance, but by choice, by love, and by an impressive amount of ice cream. Laughter rippled through the park. Derek, the pastor, continued, "Would you like to say your vows?" Derek took a deep breath. "When I agreed to go on that date, pretending to be my sister, I never imagined I was walking into a love story. You turned our comedy of errors into a romantic comedy with a happy ending. I promise to always make you laugh. I promise to support your dreams. And I promise we'll teach Josh that true love is real and worth waiting for." "Now," said the pastor, "Eleanor and Josh will bring us the rings." Eleanor stepped forward, glowing, holding a small velvet box. Josh took his place next to her, serious as a little soldier. "Josh," Eleanor said, handing him the box, "these rings represent eternal love. Would you like to give them to the pastor?" Josh took the box and walked the 3 steps to the pastor with the focus of someone carrying the secrets of the universe, then handed it over with a relieved sigh. "I did it," he said loudly, making everyone laugh. Derek and Layla exchanged rings, and just as the pastor declared them husband and wife, Josh shouted, "Finally," before they even kissed. The kiss was sweet, simple, and perfect, and when they pulled apart, Josh ran over and hugged both of their legs. "Now we're a real family," he said. "We always were," Derek replied, lifting Josh into his arms. The celebration that followed was the perfect mix of elegance and fun. There was a dessert table that could compete with any kid's birthday buffet, a dance floor where executives try to learn TikTok moves from 10-year-olds, and an ice cream cart Derek had arranged just for the occasion. During their first dinner as a married family, Josh stood up with a glass of apple juice in his hand. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced. All conversation stopped. "To my mom, who is the bravest person in the world. To my dad, Derek, who builds the best pillow forts. And to me, because now I have 2 dads, and that's really cool." The applause was overwhelming. Later, while the kids were playing and the adults were chatting happily, Layla and Derek stepped away from the party for a moment. "So," said Derek, wrapping an arm around her waist, "how does it feel, Mrs. Monroe?" "Strange, but a good kind of strange." She smiled, looking at the party. "You know, when Riley convinced me to go on that date in her place, all I wanted was to scare off an arrogant millionaire and go home. And did you manage to scare him off completely? The problem is I fell for the kind man hiding underneath the millionaire." Derek kissed her forehead. "So what's the final verdict?" Layla looked at Josh, who was teaching Eleanor how to make giant soap bubbles, at Riley, who was taking selfies with her high society friends, at Grandma Helen, who was dancing with a 70-year-old executive, and finally at Derek, the man who had turned her life into something she never even knew was possible. That was the best switch I ever made. And as the sun set over Central Park, the Parker Monroe family danced under the stars, surrounded by love, laughter, and the promise of many more adventures to come. What did you think of Layla and Derek's story? Let us know in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our stories. And check out more touching stories by clicking right here on the end screen.